Hey guys, and welcome back to TellerTube. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the subreddit r/Maliciouscompliance. If you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe and stay up to date with my latest videos. With that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Take my spot? Have fun waiting. Alright, so this story happened to my dad, but it's my favorite story that he tells me. A little info up front. We are from the Netherlands, and my dad knew the woman was Belgium due to her license plate and accent. My dad drives a truck with a crane on it, and one day he had a spot reserved, so he could do his job. The spot was marked with cones, and upon arrival, around 12 or so, he got rid of the cones to be able to park his truck in the spot. Just after he took away the cones, a Belgian lady parked her car there. My dad walked up to her and nicely explained to her that the spot was reserved for his work and asked the lady to move her car. She replied that she would be back in an hour, and that my dad would have to wait. My dad explained that he couldn't wait because the customer would have to pay for another hour of work, and that if she left, he would park his truck anyway, and that the stamp legs would block her off. He added that this would mean that she would have to wait until he was done with his job at around 5 p.m. The lady left, and my dad parked his truck, and the way the stamp legs were positioned, there was almost no room to spare in front and behind the car. About an hour later, she got back and madly demanded my dad to move his truck. The crane was up and there was stuff in it, so he just couldn't. He had told the woman that he had warned her about her not being able to leave before she left. The woman got really mad and called the police. The police arrived and asked the woman for her part of the story. Then they asked my dad for his side, and he explained what happened. The officer asked the woman if my dad had warned her before she left, and she answered with yes. The police officer simply told the woman, "You can get your car after 5 p.m. The woman left furious, and my dad finished his work with a huge smile on his face. Want me to make fancy coffees? Guess all the other drinks will have to wait. This might not be the most riveting of stories, but a long time ago I worked for a chain of posh pubs in London. The one I worked at was in Maida Vale, a fairly wealthy neighborhood with several celebrity residents. Jude Law, for example. Anyway, I was an assistant supervisor in the pub and was always responsible for Sunday afternoon shift, which for those of you who are familiar with the UK knows, this means Sunday roast was a big deal. And we had a really good roast with all the fixings, and we'd get really busy on Sundays, with all of our tables full with people who'd come and eat and drink for half of day at least. For whatever reason, my manager had decided that, despite how busy we were on Sundays, that we only needed 2 people on the shift. Again, for those of you who are familiar with the UK pubs, everyone typically orders at the bar, but it's table service. So me and the other person on shift were responsible for staffing the bar, pouring the drinks, taking food orders, but also taking out the food, taking out cutlery and sauces, restocking, cleaning glasses, and bussing tables. You're essentially a cashier, bartender, and waitstaff all at once. And then there was the one thing I hated the most. Coffees. We had this old, slow, partially broken espresso machine, which none of us had been properly trained on. Making coffee on it took ages. The worst was that it would take so long that food orders would go out more slowly, and a queue would form at the bar of people wanting to order drinks. I hated having to leave customers waiting at the bar who just wanted a quick pint or soda while I was fussed with this stupid coffee machine for 15 minutes. We all hated the goddamn coffee machine and complained about it constantly. Luckily, however, demand for coffee wasn't that high at the pub, given that it's traditionally a venue for drinking alcoholic beverages. But then, one day, corporate management announced that they wanted all their pubs to sell more coffee. In fact, they had quotas of coffee sales that they wanted us to meet. And they wanted us to ask every guest that was placing a food order if they wanted a fancy coffee drink like we were some sort of Starbucks or something. But they still didn't give us a new, proper machine, and they still provided us with exactly 0 training on making espresso drinks. For the most part, on Sundays, I ignored this edict. We were so slammed just with regular beverages and getting out Sunday roasts that adding obligatory coffees into the mix would be suicide. Then one Sunday, my manager was in the pub doing paperwork and pulled me aside and said that he noticed our sales of coffee weren't what they should be, particularly on Sundays. He noted that Sunday afternoon should be our best day for coffee sales because everyone's in for roasts. He then perched himself next to the bar to work on his paperwork. And I could kinda tell he was doing this so he could monitor whether I was upselling coffees or not. I tried to warn him. I said, with only 2 people on shift, when the rush comes, we're going to be really slammed. If I'm doing coffees as well as drinks and food service, there will be a significant delay.
Yeah, whatever, I'll jump on it if things get out of hand,
he said. So I decided he should see how crazy Sundays get, and just what adding coffees to the mix would do. As usual, on a Sunday, a trickle of people start filling in at the bar around 11 a.m. But by noon, it's already too deep at the bar. All the tables are full, and there's 2 full lines of food tickets, with multiple plates of starters, mains, and desserts. It's now that I and the other bartenders start selling coffees hard. We're telling everyone, you know what would go well with that? A nice cappuccino, or maybe a latte. And they're all agreeing with me. I wait until I have about a dozen coffee orders all lined up, and I tell the other staff member that he's on the bar and food service, and I go over to start preparing them with our old, slow, crappy espresso machine. It's at this point that things go a bit haywire. Food starts coming down the food lift, and so the bartender is sprinting back and forth between the bar, the food lift, and the tables. The crowd at the bar is growing and becoming restless. They just want some beer, for frick's sakes. I'm going as fast as I can with the coffees, but honestly, it takes a really long time. Then my manager looks up and sees the angry mob at the bar, my colleague running around like a crazy person, and asks me,
"Why aren't you pouring drinks?"
I show him my tickets. I have 20 fancy coffee orders. Manager decides to take over the coffees so I can go back to the bar, so I double down on the coffees. I'm getting people to order mochas, flat whites, I don't even know what that is really, but now we sell them. Irish coffees, coffees with shots of Baileys or amaretto. I'm going wild. And my manager is visibly sweating and frustrated and cursing at our terrible coffee machine. And then the best thing happens. We run out of coffee cups and saucers. He's now making coffees in some styrofoam cups he found in a closet. He's very close to making a cappuccino in one of those fancy Belgian beer goblets. And then finally, he comes up to me, all angry.
"Stop offering people fancy coffee drinks."
"But you said,
no more coffee drinks."
And he never asked me to upsell coffee ever again. You want documentation that I had to go to a crucial doctor's appointment? Alright, your fax machine is going to run out of paper and your staff is quitting. Okay, this was 2 years ago. Out of college, I began running a vet clinic. The owner worked at the sister clinic, so we never saw much of him. My staff, our vet, and myself worked 12-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week. The owner made sure we were understaffed to save money, and as you can imagine, the turnover was quite high. This led to me working 12 to 15 hours 6 days a week, most weeks. I was never one to take a day off unless I truly needed it, and would ensure the clinic was staffed so stuff wouldn't hit the fan. I won't get into the weeds here, but stuff seemed to fall apart when I wasn't there. Something crazy always went down, and so I felt like I always needed to be there to help. Then comes 2017. I've had 5 major knee surgeries and was having very taxing issues due to the nature of work, so I had been using my days off to see my knee surgeons. Long days, bending, and restraining animals didn't help. Then I began having reproductive issues. Needed a ton of testing and appointments. Severe pain, hemorrhaging, TMI, not normal period by any means. And bursting 10-centimeter ovarian cysts. I always planned to go to my appointments during my lunch hour or my days off. Then I had to go to the ER for internal bleeding. Had a pool of blood in my abdomen from a cyst, and this was on a Sunday, day off. And found out I may have endometriosis. Later to find out I do. So I call up my boss and say, "Hey, I'm in the hospital and I can't come in tomorrow, as the hospital wanted to admit me overnight." He said no. He said he needed thorough documentation. I was beside myself at this point. Had my SO contact my vet and employees to give them a heads up. When I get back to work on Tuesday, obviously I'm in very rough shape. I had flippin' had it. In hindsight, I shouldn't have sent my personal records to my employer, but I faxed a good 40 pages of my reports to his house. You want documentation? I'll give you some damn documentation. I gave my notice, frustrated that I had put my all and everything into this clinic. Had great relationships with employees and clients and their fur babies. The entire staff, aside from the receptionist, one tech, and vet, quit when I told them I was leaving. I certainly didn't suggest they quit, but they were done with our douchebag boss, and I had seen them cry too many times as well. To this day, my employees and vets are all super close, and we still hate that dick flop of a boss we had. The customer is always right. Okay, so this is my mom's story. When she was in college, my mom would work at a Mary Callender's. For those of you who don't know what it is, think of one of those old-fashioned diners from the 90s. My mom worked as a waitress, and occasionally you would get the average person who thought, I need to feel better by making people who will do my bidding feel awful, which is why I go to restaurants. One day, these entitled people walks in with their friend. My mom is supposed to wait their table. She goes over and asks what they would like to drink. The friend asks, "Could I get a water and a Sprite?" Whereas the entitled person demands, in her own words, "Get me a water and a coffee." My mom shrugs off the hostility in the person's voice and does as she's told. She brings out the drinks and puts them on the table. About a minute goes by, and my mom is carrying a tray of food in each hand for a different table while walking past the table with the entitled person. The entitled person puts out her hand to block my mom from moving past, while almost tripping my mom, to make sure she doesn't ignore her, and says, "Apparently, you can't understand English yet, honey." My mom is of Asian descent, but was raised to learn English as her first language. "I asked for a hot coffee, H-O-T, so heat this up." And the entitled person thrusts the cup of coffee into my mom's face as though my mom has a third arm that can carry the cup along with 2 trays of food. My mom doesn't like these kinds of people, but she also knows that the customer is always right. My mom smiles and replies, "Sure thing." She places the cup on one of the tray tables, since she, in fact, has no third arm. Apparently, the friend of the entitled person was nice enough to tell her friend, "I don't think that was very nice. I don't think you said hot when you asked first." After delivering the food she had, she walks into the kitchen with the cup of coffee. There's a coffee pot full of fresh, hot coffee waiting to be poured. My mom ignores it. There is only one way for her to make sure that the coffee is hot enough. She proceeds to stick the entire cup in the oven. After about 3 to 4 minutes of cooking, my mom uses tongs to pull out the cup, since it's way too hot to be held. The results couldn't be better. The coffee was visibly boiling. My mom places the cup on the tray using the tongs to make sure she doesn't have to hold the cup. She walks over to the table, smiling, and places the cup on the table using the tongs. The entitled person stares at the cup, almost as though she realizes what she had brought upon herself. The cup itself was even emitting steam, the liquid inside bubbling with heat. That person didn't even touch the coffee. Honestly, Malicious Compliance is one of my favorite subreddits. So many awesome stories of people getting exactly what they wanted. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe so you can stay up to date with my latest videos, and with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.